There are moments in life when we find ourselves questioning, why me? Why did I have to endure this? But I want you to understand something profound. You were placed in the narcissist's life for a reason. Life has a way of placing us in situations we never asked for, in relationships that test us, and in the presence of people who challenge everything we know about love, respect, and human connection. When we find ourselves entangled with a narcissist, it is easy to believe that we are simply unlucky, that we made a mistake, or worse, that we are somehow being punished. But what if I told you that you were placed in that situation for a reason, that there was something greater at play, something beyond mere chance? You see, life is not random. Every experience, every struggle, every difficult person we encounter serves a purpose. We often think of divine intervention as something that only brings blessings, peace, and happiness. But sometimes it brings storms. Sometimes it brings battles. Not because we are meant to suffer, but because we are meant to grow. If you found yourself in the life of a narcissist, it was not because you were weak. It was because you had something to teach, something to show, something to reveal. And whether they realized it or not, your presence in their life was no accident. A narcissist operates in a world of illusion, carefully constructing a reality that suits them, one where they are always in control, always admired, always right. They thrive in environments where others conform, where people surrender, where they can manipulate without challenge. But then you arrived, and suddenly there was something different, something they could not fully control. Maybe it was your kindness, maybe it was your strength, maybe it was your refusal to break. Whatever it was, you disrupted their world in ways they never anticipated. Perhaps you tried to love them, perhaps you believed you could help them see their own wounds, their own patterns, their own self-destruction. But a narcissist resists healing because healing requires humility, and humility is something they fear more than anything. So instead of embracing the gift you offered, whether it was love, patience, or wisdom, they fought against it. They pushed, manipulated, discarded, or tried to destroy you. Because to them, change feels like death. But that does not mean you failed. In fact, it means you did exactly what you were meant to do. You were placed in their life not to be their savior, but to be their mirror, to reflect back to them what they refuse to see in themselves, to challenge the illusion they hide behind. Maybe they ignored it, maybe they rejected it, but that does not mean the lesson was wasted. The seed was planted, and one day, long after you are gone, they will remember you not as someone they conquered, but as someone they could not erase. But beyond what you were meant to teach them, understand what you were meant to learn. Life does not put us in difficult situations to break us. It puts us there to reveal what we are truly made of. You may have entered that relationship uncertain, unaware, unprepared. But look at you now. Look at the wisdom you have gained. Look at the strength you now carry. The person you are today is not the same as the person who first walked into that storm. You have been refined by fire, but you were not consumed by it. And that is no accident. That is purpose. It is easy to dwell on the pain, to wonder why you had to endure it. But the better question is, what did it teach you? Maybe it taught you how to set boundaries, how to recognize manipulation, how to value yourself in ways you never did before. Maybe it taught you that you are not responsible for saving someone who does not want to be saved. Maybe it showed you the power of walking away, of reclaiming your life, of choosing yourself. And that is the true success. Not that you changed them, but that you changed yourself, that you grew, that you endured, that you walked away stronger. If you had not gone through that experience, would you be the person you are today? Would you have the insight, the resilience, the clarity you now possess? Probably not. And that is why it happened, not as a punishment, but as preparation. Preparation for the life ahead, for the people you will meet, for the purpose you are still yet to fulfill. So do not see yourself as a victim. Do not see that chapter of your life as a failure. Instead, recognize it for what it was, a mission, a test, a transformation. And you, whether you realize it or not, have come out victorious. You were placed in their life not to be destroyed, but to expose truth and bring transformation. This may not be an easy concept to accept at first, because when you have endured the presence of a narcissist, it often feels like you were the one who suffered, the one who lost something. But in reality, your presence in their life was not about suffering, it was about disruption. It was about being a light in a space that has long been consumed by shadows. Narcissists thrive in environments where illusion reigns. They construct a version of reality that serves them, one where they are admired, adored, or feared. It is a world built on fragile foundations, manipulation, control, and deception. And yet, into that world you were placed, not as another pawn, not as another admirer, but as something different, something that didn't fit into their carefully orchestrated script. You see, a narcissist does not seek genuine connection. They seek validation, they seek control, they seek to mold the people around them into extensions of their own desires. And yet, you walked into their life, not as an echo of their wants, but as an individual with your own light, your own depth, your own truth. And that is why they fixated on you. Because deep down, they recognize something different in you. Something that could not be easily controlled. Maybe you showed them a love they could never truly return. Maybe you gave them an honesty they were incapable of reciprocating. Maybe you had boundaries that they wanted to break, not because they despised you, but because they could not comprehend a world where someone resisted their influence. But no matter the role you played, one thing remains certain. You shook their world. They may never admit it. In fact, they may fight against the lesson you represented with everything they have. They may deny, they may twist the narrative, they may attempt to discard you as if you were insignificant. But that is only because your presence challenged them in ways they did not expect. Think about it. When someone has spent their entire life crafting an image, when they have convinced themselves that they are untouchable, what happens when they encounter someone who sees through it? Someone who does not fall for the facade. Someone who, whether knowingly or unknowingly, forces them to confront the truth of their own existence. It shakes them. It unsettles them. It exposes the cracks in their carefully built walls. And that right there is why you were placed in their life. Not to be another source of supply, not to be another person they could manipulate and discard, but to be a mirror they could not escape. A reminder, however uncomfortable, that there are forces in this world stronger than deception. But here is something important to understand. Your role was never to fix them. Your role was never to carry the weight of their healing or force them to see the truth they refused to acknowledge. You were not their savior. You were their lesson. Whether they choose to learn from it or not is not your responsibility. In life, some people will embrace growth when it is offered to them. Others will resist it, clinging to their old ways no matter how much truth is placed before them. Narcissists often belong to the latter group. They do not change easily because change requires self-awareness, and self-awareness threatens the carefully crafted illusion they have spent years maintaining. But even if they refuse to acknowledge what your presence meant, deep down they will never forget it, because you were different, because you were real, because you did not play by their rules, and that is something they will carry with them, whether they admit it or not. And so, when you look back at your time in their life, do not see yourself as the victim of their manipulation. Do not see yourself as someone who lost, someone who was deceived or used. Instead, recognize yourself as the force that disturbed their illusion. See yourself as the light that entered their darkness, even if they fought against it, because in the end, that is why you were there, not to be destroyed, not to be consumed, but to remind them, whether they accepted it or not, that truth exists, that love exists, that boundaries exist, that there are people in this world who cannot be controlled, who cannot be deceived, who stand firm in their own identity. And that alone was enough. Hardships refine us in ways nothing else can. It is in suffering that we uncover our true resilience, our unshaken will to endure, and the depth of our strength that we never even realized we possessed. Pain is a teacher, one that does not use gentle words or soft hands, but one that shapes us with fire, chiseling away the excess, the weakness, and the illusions we once held on to. The experience of being in the life of a narcissist is one of the harshest lessons. But within that storm, something remarkable happens. When you first encountered them, you may not have known what you were stepping into. Maybe you were drawn in by their charm, their charisma, or the way they made you feel seen. Perhaps they mirrored your dreams, your passions, your very essence, until you believed they were a part of your destiny. And then, slowly, the mask slipped. The warmth faded, replaced by cold indifference. The admiration turned to criticism. The love became control. You questioned yourself, wondering what had changed, what you had done wrong. But here is the truth. You did nothing wrong. What changed was their ability to maintain the illusion. And in that moment, your real journey began. At first, the pain is unbearable. There is confusion, self-doubt, an overwhelming sense of loss. It feels as if the very ground beneath you has been stolen, and you are left stumbling, searching for stability. This is where most people believe they are broken, that they have lost something of themselves. But in reality, this is where the forging begins. Because the moment you start questioning, the moment you start looking for answers, you step onto the path of awakening. The suffering teaches you patience, the ability to withstand emotional storms without collapsing. It teaches you self-awareness, forcing you to examine the patterns in your life, the wounds you need to heal, the boundaries you must establish. You start to see the difference between love and control, between support and manipulation. You begin to recognize your worth, not in the eyes of someone who diminishes you, but in the strength that rises within you, despite their efforts. And this is the transformation. Because while the narcissist seeks to weaken, to drain, to consume, what actually happens is the opposite. Yes, they wound you. Yes, they take from you. But in doing so, they inadvertently show you the depth of your endurance. You survive what they thought would break you, and then something even greater happens. You thrive. The day comes when you no longer react to their games, when their words, once so powerful, lose their grip, when their attempts to control you fall flat because you have reclaimed your power. This is the silent victory they never see coming. The moment you realize you no longer need validation from someone who only knew how to distort your reality. You step back, and suddenly, the picture becomes clear. You were never the weak one. You were never the one lacking. You were the lesson they refused to learn, the light they tried to extinguish but couldn't, and that realization is everything. Because in that moment, the suffering no longer defines you. The pain that once felt unbearable becomes a testament to your strength. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and instead recognize, "This happened for me." Not to break you, not to destroy you, but to forge you into something stronger than before. You did not just endure, you transformed. And that transformation is what sets you free. Every encounter we have in life serves a purpose, even when that purpose isn't immediately clear. When you crossed paths with the narcissist, you may have believed that your role was to love them, to help them, or to bring them peace. But the reality is, you were far more than just a companion in their life. You were a lesson. Whether they acknowledge it or not, your presence had an impact. You were not placed there for their entertainment or to feed their ego. You were there to disrupt their patterns, to challenge their illusions, and to force them to see themselves in a way they would rather avoid. Narcissists thrive in environments where they are admired without question. They construct a world where they are always right, always in control, always the center of attention. But then someone like you enters their life. Someone who sees beyond the mask. Someone who offers genuine love, not blind worship. This is where the shift happens. At first, they may have seen you as an opportunity, another person to mold into a source of validation. But soon, they realized that you were different. You had depth, you had strength, you had a presence that couldn't be easily manipulated. Even in the moments when they tried to diminish you, you still stood firm. Perhaps you questioned yourself, wondering if you were doing something wrong, if you weren't enough, if you could have done more to help them heal. But the truth is, your very existence in their life was already doing more than you could see. You were showing them something they didn't know how to handle. Authenticity. You were showing them that love isn't about control, that relationships aren't about power, and that people cannot be used and discarded without consequence. They may not have admitted it, but you made them uncomfortable, not because you did anything wrong, but because you reflected something they couldn't understand. Narcissists surround themselves with people who enable their illusions, but when faced with someone who stands in truth, it shakes their foundation, and that is what you did. Whether it was through your kindness, your patience, your boundaries, or your refusal to be diminished, you forced them to confront something they never wanted to face, themselves. There were moments when they saw it, even if only for a second. Moments when they realized that you were offering something real, something they would never be able to truly reciprocate. That realization may have made them angry, made them lash out, or made them push you away, but even in their denial, even in their cruelty, even in their coldness, they were learning. They were absorbing something that they could not ignore. And long after you are gone, that lesson will remain. It will show up in the quiet moments, in the relationships they attempt to form after you, in the emptiness they feel when they try to replace what they lost. You might never hear them say it. You might never get closure or an apology or an admission that you changed something in them. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Because you were there, because you existed in their world for a time, they were given a glimpse of something different. They may reject it now, they may continue their same patterns, but somewhere deep within them, they know they encountered something they didn't deserve, something they will never find again. And that is why you must not look at this as a failure. Your purpose was never to change them, but to plant a seed, to be a disruption in their cycle, to remind them, even if only for a moment, that there is another way to exist. Whether that seed grows or withers is out of your hands. What matters is that you did your part. You were not weak for loving them. You were not foolish for trying. You were not naive for believing in something better. If anything, you were exactly what they needed to experience, even if they could not appreciate it.
As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body. Success is often misunderstood. Many believe it's about achieving a specific outcome, changing someone, or making an impact that is visibly recognized. But in truth, success is not always loud, nor is it always acknowledged by the world. In the context of your journey with a narcissist, success is not about whether they changed because of you, nor is it about receiving validation for what you endured. Your success lies in what you became as a result of that experience. It is about your growth, your strength, your ability to rise from what was meant to diminish you. When you first encountered this person, you might have seen something in them that others didn't. Perhaps you saw their potential, their hidden pain, or their ability to be more than what they were. Maybe you believed that with love, patience, and understanding, they could heal, change, or transform. But the reality of dealing with a narcissist is that they resist change not because they cannot, but because they refuse to see a reason to. They build walls so high around themselves that no amount of love can break through unless they choose to open a door. And yet you stayed, you tried, you gave, you poured parts of yourself into someone who only knew how to take. That alone is not failure. It is proof of your capacity to love, to care, and to give beyond yourself. But there came a moment, whether gradually or all at once, when you realized that no matter how much you gave, it was never going to be enough. Not because you were lacking, but because their hunger for control, validation, and superiority was unquenchable. It is in that realization that your journey to true success began, because in that moment, you faced the truth, a truth that many never accept. You understood that your worth was never dependent on their recognition of it. You realized that you did not exist to be drained, manipulated, or diminished for the comfort of someone else. That awakening was not just an end, it was a beginning. Walking away is often seen as an act of giving up, but in reality, it is an act of reclaiming. It is the moment where you take back every part of yourself that was chipped away. The love you gave, you learn to give it back to yourself. The patience, the kindness, the understanding, you redirect it to someone who deserves it. You. That is where your success lies. Not in whether they regret losing you, not in whether they finally understand what they did, but in the fact that you survived them and came out wiser, stronger, and more aware of your own value. There is power in knowing you did not allow yourself to be destroyed. You may have stumbled, you may have felt broken, but you are still here. And that is not weakness. That is resilience. That is success. Because despite the pain, despite the manipulation, despite the gaslighting and the self-doubt, you found your way back to yourself. You learned that love is not supposed to feel like suffering. You learned that walking away is not a betrayal of love, but a declaration of self-respect. You learn that peace is not something another person grants you, it is something you create by choosing yourself. And even more importantly, you learn to forgive not necessarily them, but yourself. You forgave yourself, for staying as long as you did, for believing in someone who refused to believe in themselves, for giving chances that were never deserved. You let go of the guilt, the shame, the regret, because you realized that those experiences were not wasted time. They were lessons that shaped you into the person you are becoming. And that person, the one who walked away, who rebuilt, who refused to be defined by pain, is someone to be proud of. So do not measure your success by whether they changed. Do not wait for closure that may never come. Do not hope for an apology that is unlikely to be given. Your success was never in their hands. It has always been in yours. You are not a victim of your past. You are a survivor of it. You are proof that even after being pulled into the storm, you can step out of it with a clearer vision of who you are and what you deserve. And that is a victory no one can take away from you. Walking away is not defeat. It is the fulfillment of your role in their story. Many people struggle with this idea because society often conditions us to believe that success means fixing things, solving problems, and making relationships work at any cost. We are taught that if we try hard enough, love deeply enough, or endure patiently enough, things will change. But that is an illusion, especially when dealing with a narcissist. You must understand this. Not all battles are meant to be won in the way you imagined. Some battles are won simply by realizing they are no longer yours to fight. Walking away is not giving up. It is knowing when your role in someone's life has reached its conclusion. It is understanding that your presence served a purpose, but staying beyond that purpose would only drain you. The narcissist wanted you to believe that leaving meant you failed, that if you had just done more, given more, tolerated more, things would have been different. But that is the very lie that kept you trapped. They built a world where they were the sun and you were expected to revolve around them, feeding their needs, reflecting their light, never shining on your own. But here's the truth. You were never meant to be a satellite in someone else's orbit. You were meant to be your own universe. By walking away, you reclaimed yourself. That is not defeat. That is freedom. When you leave a narcissist, they may never acknowledge what you brought into their life. They may never admit the impact you had or the value you gave. They may twist the story, paint themselves as the victim, and cast you as the problem. But deep inside, a part of them knows. They may never say it out loud, but your absence will teach them in a way your presence never could. They will search for someone like you, someone with your heart, your kindness, your strength, and they will not find it because you were never the problem. You are the gift they refuse to appreciate. That is why leaving is not failure. It is the ultimate statement of self-worth. It is standing up and saying, I deserve more than this. And it is in that moment that you complete the purpose you were meant to serve in their life. You were not sent to be their prisoner. You were sent to be their wake-up call. Whether or not they wake up is their journey, not yours. The real victory is not in changing them. It is in realizing you do not need to. It is in moving forward without bitterness, without resentment, without looking back with regret. It is in understanding that your purpose was never to fix them, but to find yourself. One of the greatest forms of strength is not in fighting battles, but in choosing which ones are worth your energy. You walked away not because you were weak, but because you finally understood your value. You saw that your love should not be wasted on someone who only knows how to take. You recognize that respect, kindness, and empathy are not things that should be begged for. They are things that should flow naturally in a relationship. You did not lose anything by leaving. You gained yourself. You gained clarity, peace, and the opportunity to build a life where your energy is not drained by someone who refuses to grow. You are now free to invest in relationships that are healthy, balanced, and nurturing. You are free to love and be loved in the way you always deserved. Do not carry anger with you. Do not hold on to resentment. You do not need to seek revenge or prove anything to them. The greatest proof of your strength is in your peace. While they continue their cycle, you have broken free. While they seek new people to feed their ego, you are building something real. The moment you stepped away with your dignity intact, you succeeded. And that, my friend, is not just a victory. It is the beginning of something far greater than you ever imagined.